Liberation, a podcast for those taking their work deeper and higher by thriving, not just surviving. I'm your host, Autumn Benzet. At home, I'm a mom, and when I'm here with you, I'm a trauma-certified coach, speaker, teacher, and facilitator of safe space for women, mothers, service-based business owners, online coaches, and thought leaders who desire to return back to their heart, remember their wholeness, and become their own source of validation so that the life and business they build is rooted in love, true inner peace, and devotion to their personal truth. In this show, I will be bringing you conversations with experts, leaders, and healers who are living, breathing embodiments of their work, their wholeness, and their sovereignty, as well as offerings, community Q&As, wisdom quickies, and solo episodes where I share potent clips and transmissions from behind-the-scenes coaching calls and live streams, answer questions you have for me, and share a look into my own personal processes, perspectives, and teachings that have been catalysts for me on my own journey. I will be diving into the deep ends of life and facilitating challenging and uncomfortable conversations, such as how unresolved childhood, intergenerational, sexual, and religious trauma affects your business and ways of relating, conscious parenting, remothering yourself, and so much more. You can expect me to ask questions that invite you deeper into your own awareness, and you may even hear people and opinions you disagree with. I pray that through this space, you can be initiated deeper into your own growth and healing, practicing discernment for what lands for you and what doesn't, and being open to expanding your own views and opinions on emotionally charged topics. I believe in the both and here. All of our opinions, feelings, experiences, and perspectives are valid and belong. Through these conversations, learnings, and teachings, I pray that you are able to return to your heart and remember who you were before you learned who you had to be. And that as you learn to integrate all parts of you, that you will embody a way of showing up for yourself and the life you were always destined for. That you will be convicted in your truth and create from your fullest expression. That you allow your business to become a way of breathing your soul into humanity. That you will access true freedom and learn to feel safe in surrender. That you will be turned on again by your own essence and creations. That you will learn how to be with what is, and that you will contribute in a way that is felt in the body and anchored in your inner wisdom. If you're willing to play, be curious, and ask yourself the hard questions too, then let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Liberation. Wherever it is that you are listening, I'm so thankful that you're here and that you've chosen to tune in and that you are called to the message inside of this episode. I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you're having a beautiful week and that you have a beautiful weekend ahead of you. So whenever it is that you're listening to this, I'm sending you so much love and so much gratitude and just being in this presence, in this space with you. I'm breathing in that energy. So thank you for being here with me. Today's episode is and I only have a select amount of time to record, so I'm like, okay, let's jump in because I really do want to get to the goods as much as possible in these episodes because I value your time and I honor that you're busy. There's probably a million different things that are pulling at your attention all the time, and so I really do respect and really honor and want to value your time. So this episode is a community Q. And so I've been facilitating these segments of sorts for the last quite a few months now. And this has been serving as an opportunity to take your questions and to answer them and to make sure that I'm holding space for you as well, right? There are so many different topics and things that I want to talk about, things that I'm passionate to bring you, but I also want you to feel included. I want you to have a seat at the table. I want you to have a space where your questions can be asked and answered, and for you to feel supported and seen and heard. So I really enjoy these episodes because I love knowing that I get to serve you guys in a way that you want and that I'm answering questions that you have. And yeah, that always makes me feel so good because, again, like I trust that whatever I trust that whatever I share is exactly what it is that you need in that moment. And also like I can only imagine like when I listen to podcasts, I'm like, oh, like I have all these other questions. I have all these things that I usually want to know more about, whether it's just topics that they kind of speak on. And I'm like, wow, it'd be so interesting to know this, or I would love to know a little bit more about this, or maybe it's something in the actual episode and I have like more questions, and maybe that's just because I'm a projector. Maybe it's just like my natural nature. I'm a very curious person by nature. I always have more questions, but that's kind of the intention of this space. So anyways, thank you for being here. This episode, the question that came through, there were a few questions that came through, but the one that I decided to hold space for in this episode was, you guys were asking the best way to start addressing and healing past trauma. And I'm so thankful that truly more people want to do this work. I love that this question came through because it means that more people are becoming aware, and that the stigma around what trauma is and what trauma looks like is starting to shift. And that means that there's more opportunity for more healing. It means that there's more opportunity for, I feel like it's like the world that I want to see, the world that everybody else wants to see, where there's equality and love and, compassion for one another and respect for one another, and where we all have autonomy and, our own sovereignty. And I really do believe that even though we all have different ways and different paths in which we see that to come to fruition, it's what we want. And I truly do believe that by us being able to, heal and address and heal our trauma, this is a huge part of the foundation for what we need as a collective for humanity. If we want to see the world come to the place that we see it becoming, we can't do that without being aware of how we respond and how we react and our dysregulation and the things that have impacted us and affected us in our life, so then we can really truly treat other people with the compassion and the respect that we're showing up for ourselves with. Otherwise, we're continuously always projecting unconscious trauma responses, unresolved things that we have not yet been able to reconcile with. It's past unconscious behaviors and energies and ways of responding and reacting that we get passed down from our parents, and it's ancestral and intergenerational and all of that we'll go into in this episode. But I really do believe that if we're wanting sustainability in our businesses and in our lives, and we want to feel grounded and at peace and free in our life and in our marriages and our relationships and with our friends and in our work that we're here to do, we want to feel fulfilled by our passion. We really want to feel at ease and calm and grounded. And it's not that life is always going to be easy. That's not the goal. It's that we have the inner resources to be able to navigate those things with grace, compassion, and power when they do happen. And that's a process. It is absolutely a process, but this is such a key piece. I really do believe. Like I'm so convicted in that. It's crazy. And if you get me talking in person on this, like I will go in. I'm very passionate about this. Like I really do believe that this is the root of it all. So I'm thankful that this question came through, because it means that people are curious, and it means that other people. Whoa, sorry. My dryer is going right beside my office, and when that happens, when it's like it just all of a sudden just like fucking has a rave and you're like, whoa, like, are you going to blow through the wall? That's what it felt like, but it's okay. It calmed down, it chilled out. So anyways, I love that this question is coming through because it means that more people are becoming aware. Now, as I dive into this, there's some things that I really want to be mindful of, and I want you to be mindful of when I'm in the conversation of trauma and when we're talking about healing trauma, because this is a complex conversation and I don't want to make this light. I don't want to make this seem like this is easy. I don't want it to sound like, it's a clear-cut, systemized path, because it's not. Healing trauma is, again, it's complex and it's nuanced, and it's a different experience for every single person. And so moving into this conversation, right, again, like I want to be so mindful of this because trauma has become kind of a buzzword in the industry. And because we're starting to become aware of our trauma, we're starting to talk about trauma, kind of infuse the language into our verbiage, saying these are things that we heal, and all these other things. And the truth is that not everybody can heal trauma. Like, not everybody has those resources or those skills. And it's something that I really hope that as you're navigating your journey and you're seeking support, that you're really, really mindful that the people that are saying that they can heal trauma really do have the resources and the skills to do that. And I say that from a place of true love for yourself. I really want everybody to receive the support that they can. I understand that, like, that's not always going to be me. And it's not always going to be me that you align with. And that's okay. I truly honor and get that. But I'm saying this because there might be somebody that you're called in to work with, or somebody that you want to be supported by. And again, trauma is very complex, and you have to be mindful because it can be easy to be re-traumatized. And so anybody can read a book, right? Anybody can, just kind of utilize the language and the, that kind of stuff into their verbiage and into their content, because if people know that's something that they want, then people utilize that as a marketing strategy. And sometimes it's unconscious, sometimes it's very conscious. And so I have zero ill will towards anybody that does this. I'm just saying this from a state and from a space of really hoping that you're aware and you ask the questions. So for me, like, I've been trained and gone through an intensive certification process and many hours, many hours of facilitating this work, supervised as well as unsupervised, for students and for clients. And I've seen this work play out, but I'm certified in facilitating safe space, which is all trauma work and somatic healing. And that's why I talk about this in this way now. It was something I was really mindful of ever bringing up or using the language or the verbiage around before I was certified, because I understand the weight that this carries. Like, I truly understand that we're not just this is people's well-being. It's their vitality. It is their mental, physical, emotional health. It affects their family. It affects our careers. Like, it affects everything. So we have to take it, so we cannot take it lightly, is what I'm trying to say. So I really wanted to preface that. I really want to make sure that you understand that if you are working and looking for somebody to work through and process the trauma with, that you keep your blinders on, right? You stay aware and you ask really powerful questions, and you make sure that you have all of the information that you need, and really discern for yourself, because again, not everybody can heal trauma, but anybody can kind of use that language and verbiage in their content. And the reason why here is because once you open up trauma, right? Once you start peeling back the layers, you can't really stop, right? Once you've seen it, once you start to know it, once you start to understand it, it just it starts to keep opening up. You open up one thing, it's like a maze of doors. It's like you open up one door, another door opens, another door opens, another door opens, another door opens, another door opens. And that's the thing, is it's like, I'm being fully honest about this because I always want people who are getting into trauma work to understand the weight that it carries. Every single one of my clients always is like, damn, I wish I signed like a contract with, and obviously signed contracts with me, but like I like with trauma, it's like, damn, like I didn't, and I always preface this, but it's always something that I think catches people off guard, is how once you've seen the things that you've seen, and once you start peeling back, layers, another layer shows up, another layer, another layer, another layer, another layer. And I think anybody who starts doing trauma work is like, man, like I wish I could go back to the days where I was just like completely closed off to any of this, and I was just responding in my trauma and stuff. And we joke about it, but obviously we're so thankful for this work, and we would never really truly change it. But it's a joke that kind of runs, because trauma, yeah, like once you open it up, once you start peeling back the layers, you really can't stop. And so trauma in itself heals in layers. It takes a long time. And this is why I have my containers structured the way that I do, because I honor the integrity of what trauma needs way more than I care about how sexy it is to market a small term package or a small term program. Those things, yes, that's sexy. Yes, it's easier for people to say yes to, but it does not honor the intention and the energy of the work and the space that it needs to really heal and transmute and alchemize the trauma that's stored in your body from so many years and different core wounds that you've experienced in your childhood, or in your adulthood, or even ancestral. And it's trauma, again, this is a lifelong journey. So you have to kind of get into this knowing that there's no end goal, right? There's no space where you're like, okay, I'm going to get to this destination and it's all going to be healed and it's all going to be fixed. That's not the journey. That's not the process. Trauma, although there are certain traumas that I feel like you can alchemize and you can absolutely heal, in general, it's just an always evolving process as a human being, right? You're always hitting new places of growth and you're learning more about yourself, and you're meeting different people where they become mirrors to other places within you, or different experiences where it reflects where you're not already free. And this is our journey as a human being. It's continuously coming more and more home to ourselves and remembering. And everybody's journey looks different, but I do believe in some way, shape, or form, this is a lifelong journey once you start it. And so the other piece that's really important to be mindful of when it comes to trauma is trauma heals in relationships. Okay. Trauma heals within safe relationships, and safe is the key word. And the reason why I mention this is because I don't advise anybody to just start going on and like healing their trauma by themselves. That's not something that I would ever suggest, or promote. Trauma, again, so trauma itself, it's created in relationships. And it's usually created in, maybe it's a partnership with like a husband or a wife, or, a partner of another kind. It could be within a friendship. It could be between you and a man, you and a woman. It could be between, with your child. It could be, with your parents, your mom, your dad. It could be with your grandparents. It could be with your lineage, your culture, money, sexuality. No matter what it is, we're in relationship to and with other things all the time. And the trauma itself isn't just happening to you, it's happening in relationship to you in something. And so trauma itself heals in safe relationships. That's why it's really, really important that when you're healing trauma, you're in a safe relationship. You're with somebody who has actually cultivated the skills to know how to hold you and to witness you and to see you and to help you move through and transmute and alchemize, right? Break up all that frozen, stuck energy that's in the body, right? That's what trauma is. It's frozen energy. There's a moment in time and age where something happened and you weren't able to transmute it, right? You weren't able to alchemize and complete the cycle, right? Discharge that energy, where had you been able to discharge the energy properly, then you would kind of go on and it wouldn't be a traumatized situation. And so people can go through many different things, even car accidents, and come out of it and not be traumatized because they might be able to expel and discharge the energy fully. That doesn't happen for everybody. And so that that energy gets stuck in the body, and then we might not even have any recollection of the experience. We could have forgot it because it's traumatic and we could have stuffed it down, right? Or this could just be something that, we move on from life and we kind of just forget about, and we don't consciously, even if we kind of remember it, we don't really like think about it too much. And so we just have the energy that's stored in the body, and there's these sensations that show up and we feel in multiple different situations in the same way, but we don't always know where it's coming from or like where it started or why we feel that way. And so this is why I coach and I hold space in the way that I do, why I have containers the way that I have them, why they're in a length. Everything is very intentional. Being able to hold space and be able to witness other people in their trauma and not be in your own energy, right? Like not, or for me to be in my own energy and to hold that so then they can attune to me rather than me getting in an activation while they're in an emotional activation. It's a skill. It's a skill to hold space, to unhook, to be present, and to create a space of safety for somebody to go there. It's a skill that I'm really proud that I've been able to cultivate. And again, like I don't say this from a space of like work with me. I would love that, obviously, for the people who feel aligned to connect them with this work and to support and hold you through this. And also, there are other people who do this work. And my point here, more than anything, it's not so much about who you're working with. It's just about making sure that you understand as we're going into this conversation about like how trauma is healed, to know that a key part in healing trauma is within relationships. It's in being with somebody and witnessed by somebody and held by somebody in a way that you've never been able to experience in your life before. And usually when we try to open up with maybe a friend or a partner or a parent, we can be in an activation and be quieting ourselves, dimming ourselves down, not speaking our full truth from a space of like, will they judge me? It hasn't been safe to say this before. Will they use it against me? Will this happen? Will this happen? And so it's hard for you to truly alchemize, heal, and transmute that frozen energy, right? Be able to somatically move it through, get what you need out of that, so then you can heal it. If you're in a space where you truly on some level don't feel fully safe to be held without judgment. That's not everybody has those skills, and it's not of a fault to anybody. It's we haven't been taught them. And this is why it's incredibly important, again, that if you are looking to start healing your trauma, that you look and you seek out somebody that you feel incredibly safe with, and you understand and identify what safety even means for you. What does it mean for you to feel safe? How do you know that you feel safe with somebody? And this can be, very interesting if you've never had relationships where you feel safe with people fully before, right? It's not uncommon for people to, in some way, even with their partners, their best friends, the people that they're closest to, in some way, filter themselves or have some space of like, I'm not sure I feel fully safe to not be abandoned or rejected if I'm fully myself, where they can have that secure relating relationship. There's usually some kind of codependency or disconnection or detachment. So it's again, this is just, as we're talking about going in and being able to start addressing and healing your trauma, I would highly suggest looking at healing that with somebody. I would really suggest that as you are approaching this, that you don't go and do it on your own. It's You can create some awareness, and I'm going to help you in that. But again, you have to be mindful so you don't get re-traumatized, because that's can happen easier than you think. I don't say that from a space of scaring anybody or being negative or anything. I really believe being honest is loving. I believe being fully transparent is kind. And I believe that you're resourceful. I believe that you're sovereign. I believe that you can hold that and receive that, and to know that, um, you know, you. That's not something that you probably, if you're listening to, would want. Or maybe you've even been in different situations or with coaches or mentors or therapists where you have actually been re-traumatized. So it's just being mindful of how real or true that might be for you. Maybe you've never experienced that, so just be mindful of it. I don't want you to be on overwatch or, stressed out about it. It's just trust yourself, like trust your body when you're in space with somebody, and don't be afraid to say no if something doesn't align. Don't be afraid to ask for more time. Somebody that's trauma informed wants this to be a safe experience for you, right? So they're going to make sure that they answer the questions. They're not pressuring you. They're holding the space for you, and they're walking you through somatically whatever it is that's coming up in the way. So then you can be, moving into that decision with your truth, and your sovereignty, and from a grounded, rooted place in your body. So, with that being said, the other piece that I would say to be really mindful of as you are starting to trust and heal your own trauma is kind of like this fine line between like journaling around, and having the awareness of it versus like somatically moving it through your body. Again, anytime that you're starting to bring up trauma where you're not being able to be held in a safe space, and if there is an activation, if you start to get really upset, cry, get angry, and you don't know how to move through that in a way that's healthy, and it just kind of boils over and amplifies the emotion, and that can be re-traumatizing. So we have to, yes, journaling can be helpful. It's always a really powerful thing to have awareness of ourselves and to understand our family and our lineage, and all the things that we're feeling a lot better. And like I think that that's a beautiful thing, absolutely. But there is a difference between, and even with that, I would be mindful, because again, like once you open something up, and if something processes and you don't have a safe space to be held, then that can also be traumatizing for you. So the work that is that I do and other somatic healers, the difference is like on one hand, like you're logically just taking awareness and writing it down. You probably don't have a space to process that with. Like for my clients, they have Voxer support. So if it's in between a session, then they can Voxer me what they're feeling, and I can walk them through how to somatically, like I'll walk them through what it is that they're moving through. And so if you don't have that space, and then you kind of just start journaling things again, like I really just want to be so mindful when I'm in this conversation, because again, yes, have some awareness, kind of ponder things. There's definitely things that we can do here, but the difference in, again, the kind of like the work it is that I'm doing and how I move my clients through it is with a somatic approach. So there's a process here in actually moving it through your body, right? Expressing the emotion or giving yourself what you didn't or weren't able to complete in that trauma event or that traumatic event. So there might have been a moment or time where maybe you weren't seen or you weren't heard, or you really needed a hug, or you really needed to be validated that that moment was hard and that it shouldn't have happened, or maybe you were really angry and a boundary was crossed and you really needed to scream, but it was never safe for you to do that. There's all these different things that can come up when you're um you know addressing it and moving through your trauma and your dysregulation, and that's what somatic work really is, and why having a safe space to be able to process that and have somebody guide you through that is, again, so important, because the energy is stuck in the body, right? It's not stuck in your mind where you're journaling it out. It's stuck in your body. And so we have to have a way of being able to actually express what's gone on that's gone without being expressed. The emotion that's trapped within that doesn't feel safe to take up space, and be able to go into that space and give yourself what you didn't get back then. And again, usually my whole goal with my clients is always to embody this work together in such a way over a long period of time that they can go out and do this for their life. And by long period of time, I mean it's such a small period of time in like the grand scheme of life. But it is a time frame and a process where we do it together, and then they've embodied it in a way that they can do it in their life. And they have safety to do that. And so if we're talking about like the next steps for yourself as well, like I've kind of shared the things to be mindful of and to discern for yourself and to tread lightly with. The As we're actually like, well, what do I do? Right? Like how do I start addressing or healing my trauma? As you've heard me say very much, like it's obviously I highly suggest reaching out to somebody who's trained and qualified to be able to do this work. Self Healer is also a really great place to start. It's my workshop. It's a 2-hour class that you can purchase on my website, and I created it exactly for this. I wanted to help people to start to identify their trauma and to start to understand where it might be living, where it might be coming from, what the foundation is, how it's showing up in their life, how it's affecting them, and just everything else. All the details are on my website, so you can definitely go and like look a little bit more and see what you resonate with there. But that's a really great place to start, because one of the key pieces is at the end I share how to actually regulate yourself. This in itself is worth thousands of dollars. Like this saves relationships, it saves lives, it saves launches, it saves businesses, it saves handling conflict and parenting in a way that doesn't feel good for you, that's not reflective of what you truly want. Like learning how to regulate yourself in conflict is worth every fucking penny. And so it's like a huge class, that obviously there's channel transmission through the entire process, where I, just kind of riff and share what's coming up and coming through in that moment that I'm really tuned into sharing. And then there's also, right, like the embodiment work through actually learning how to embody a regulated nervous system. But then there's the explanation. It's all the foundational teachings around trauma and, trauma responses and attachment styles and how this is showing up within your life and your business, and asking you the questions and prompting you deeper. And so that's a really great place to start. And that's where I would suggest anybody, any of my clients, anybody thinking about doing this work to go to first. But then outside of that as well, this is obviously stuff that I share as well a little bit deeper inside of the actual workshop, inside of the class. But the first piece is connecting back to your body. When you're healing and addressing trauma, the main thing is that people are disconnected from their bodies. People don't know how they feel. People have no idea how they feel ever anymore. We've gotten so used to being busy and distracted, right? We're on our phones, you're out with friends, you're in business, you have to work harder, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to take care of the laundry. Like there's so many demands of life. And then where there's not demands, we find them and we make them and we fill up our time. And people genuinely don't really know how to slow down and to be with themselves. We're so disconnected because of trauma, right? Trauma disconnects you and disassociates you from the body. That's literally its intention, as a way of you creating safety. It's not safe for you to be in the body anymore. So people disconnect, and once they have space that feels uncomfortable, there's something else they got to do. They got to scroll on their phone, they got to watch a TV show. And this is the first thing that we have to start to do, is we have to start to pause. We have to start to slow down. We have to start to reconnect back to our bodies, right? The simple awareness of how you actually feel. How do you know you feel that way? What's showing up in the body? Like how do you know that you're anxious? How do you know that you're angry? How do you know that you're happy? Have you ever asked yourself these questions, right? Even in presence, When's the last time that you were just in a present moment and you were present and you allowed yourself just to be there and check in, like, how do I feel? What do I need? Like, what's going on, without grabbing your phone or, being pulled into something else? Like, when's the last time you actually allowed yourself to be in your body? Right? How often do you actually check in and just connect with yourself? This is a guide itself, because if you can start to identify what you're feeling, you can start to be like, wow, that's really interesting that I feel that way. Like, what's going on there? And you can start to identify like what's going on that's kind of creating those sensations. You can start to, ponder like, when have I felt this way before? Like, where has that kind of come up from? Like, where's the pattern, right? And starting to understand just a little bit more about yourself, right? It's such a guide when you can connect. Your body will tell you everything. Your body is always communicating with you. It's your compass. It is your guide. It tells you everything. And so, if you just hold the space to really connect back with your body and have the awareness there, it'll tell you pretty much most of what you need. But usually, that's so hard in itself. So, it's just noticing, like, damn, it's really hard to connect with my body. And like, I can maybe last a couple seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes before like I have to like jump out of that. Like, isn't that interesting that like it's so hard to be in your own body? And this is what I mean, right? This is the layer. This is how it happens. But another piece is understanding what type of trauma that you're experiencing, right? There's little trauma, and not that I think like one trauma is bigger than the other. It's just kind of how it's defined. There's littler trauma around like not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling validated, not feeling recognized. Just these kind of smaller quote unquote things that we don't always identify as trauma. And then there are bigger things like sexual trauma, a car accident, going to war, being robbed at knife point. Like there's these types of things that can be a big part of different kinds of forms of trauma. But then there's also things like birth trauma and child loss and sexual trauma and religious trauma and domestic trauma, indoctrination and organized institutionalized trauma, intergenerational, ancestral, patriarchal, emotional, mental, physical, childhood, financial, right? There's all these different types of trauma that we've experienced. And so we have to be really radically honest with ourselves. We have to be willing to call in. And this is why safety is so important, having safe spaces to be held, because once things come up, we can start to have reactions and activations similar to before because it's trying to complete itself. So it's, again, I cannot stress enough how important it is to have safe spaces to be able to process and navigate trauma when it comes up if you're really going there. But you start to identify what's going on in your body and you're like, wow, when have I felt that way before? And you're like, wow, well, maybe in church, or maybe I was, trigger warning here, raped, maybe I was sexually assaulted, maybe I had an abortion, maybe this happened, maybe this happened, maybe this happened, maybe like I just was on stage and somebody laughed at me, or I was, not heard by my teacher. My friends bullied me. There are so many different levels of what people experience in their life, and how everybody experiences trauma is different than another person. So I can never be able to tell you that. That's only something that you can tell yourself and be able to identify for yourself. But when you start to connect back to your body, you start to identify different times in your life when you felt that way and what that looks like and the different types of trauma that you've experienced. And sometimes just having those words pop up, you start asking yourself questions and it just starts kind of coming into your awareness. But then it's kind of identifying as well as like, what's the programming that you've been hooked into as a result of that trauma? Like, what are the things that you've started to believe to be true about yourself? What are the things that you believe to be true about how you have to show up for other people? The way that you have to carry emotional labor for other people? And how has that all been, in a way, whether it's like identifying or living from it or believing in it or operate, like whatever that has been, like how has that been reflective as a way to keep you safe? Because everything that we're doing always from a primal state is to keep ourselves safe. Like, that's first and foremost. And so no matter what we're doing, even unconsciously, it's usually in an act to keep ourselves safe. So it's starting to identify, okay, so like what have I hooked into that's not reflective of my true essence, my true self, the way that what I truly believe or what I want to feel, but I've maybe hooked into it because it's kept me safe, it's kept me loved, it's kept me accepted, it's kept me belonging, it's kept me regulated. I could get my needs met, right? Starting to kind of peel back those layers and start to identify that a little bit for yourself. And it's remembering here too, right? Is that like, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, is that trauma stores 80% in the body and only 20% in your mind. So it's only 20% a mindset thing. 80% of it's stored in your body. So this is why, again, we have to be so mindful about like doing it in a somatic approach, because it's not just about shifting beliefs and stories. This is about actually moving energy out of your body. There's actually 10 times of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the information that's being sent through your body, there's 10 times more information being sent from your gut to your brain than your brain to your gut. So again, like we have to identify that like we have to be moving the energy through our body versus just focusing on our mind. And yes, that serves a place. But it's not the whole piece. And we got to move it out of the body first, and then most of it shifts out of our mind just very naturally. And then, I think the last little bit here, that the last couple things here is like, first, having this connection to your body, right? Starting to identify more about how you feel, and having that awareness of like how you react in dysregulation and how you try to reestablish a sense of safety, right? Whether you're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, and response, then you start to understand you a little bit more, right? You start to understand where you want to fight and where you want to like go to war. You understand more where you want to run away. You understand where you want to just like freeze, and where you kind of just find yourself you kind of like looking to other people for how you feel, right? Struggling to like identify your feelings, just kind of saying yes when you want to say no. Like that's like fawn energy, right? Kind of really struggling to know who you are and what your identity is, because you're always like trying to appease and please other people in your life. And so like it's starting, the more that you understand how you feel, then we kind of start to identify like how we respond, and then we can kind of understand like why we respond that way, where that came from, and like what's hooked in from all of that. So again, like creating safety, like move through all this, it's a fucking process, like it really is. And so that's why it's so important to work with somebody who knows what they're doing. But I also think like it's so powerful just to kind of start to have this information and have some awareness, and start to kind of learn a little bit more about yourself. But the last little piece here that I want to leave you with is that, as you're navigating and starting to address and heal your trauma, compassion and validation heals. And it's so important that you be compassionate with yourself and that you validate what you feel, and you validate your trauma, and you validate your experience, and you validate the pain that you've gone through. Pushing yourself, guilting yourself, shaming yourself is never going to heal you. It's never going to move you forward. That will only further traumatize you. So be very compassionate with yourself and validate how you feel, and give yourself that space to know that you're having a human experience and you're allowed to have it, and things have been hard, and it was a hard childhood, it was a hard moment, and you didn't deserve that. And so again, I walk through the actual process and like how to do this inside of Self Healers. So I really do invite you. It's a one-time purchase class, but you get lifetime access. You can come back to it over and over again. There's an abundance of questions, things to reflect on, information to support you with. And, whether it's you or somebody that you love or somebody that I would highly suggest, passing it on. Again, like this is how we get this. I really believe in our humanity to be in a more regulated state where we can fucking respect each other, and we can love each other, and we can be sovereign and responsible for ourselves. So that's a whole other conversation I won't go into right now, but I appreciate you diving in, learning more, connecting with somebody that you know or love, and just being here. Again, just listening. And I hope that this episode was helpful. Again, it's kind of a tricky conversation because I want to give you the resources and the support, but there are a lot of things when it comes to trauma I want to be so honest with and mindful that we want to kind of tread lightly, because it's this, this is such a sensitive topic, and I really do honor that trauma is very real and very serious, for so many of us. So I pray that this episode was helpful and that you got something out of this. And if you need more guidance, you need more support, I'll leave the link for Self-Healer below. Otherwise, you can just go to bossybabecoaching.com and access it there. It'll be under courses. So it's available for you to purchase now. And then it'll just link you up to Podia. And then if you already have an account, then it's easy access. It'll already go right in there. Otherwise, it'll send you a login information to access your account and your video. So thank you so much for being here. This episode was wonderful. It was so much fun to record for you. And as always, if you have other questions or more things coming through, make sure you DM me. You kind of keep your eyes peeled for my question box and you submit them so then I can make sure I answer your questions on future episodes. I hope you have such a beautiful day and a beautiful week and a beautiful weekend. And I love you. Thank you for tuning into Liberation. If you loved this episode, please subscribe and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes or your favorite podcast app so others may find this podcast too. You can learn more about today's guest and conversation by swiping up on the show notes. Before you go, I want to tell you about the Portal of Mastery membership site. For only $87 per month, you can join my monthly gatherings that will support you in building a body-based business and allow you to explore your deeper truths, power, and expression. With a new monthly bundle, a portal of resources, embodiment practices, and trainings, and a space to continue the conversations we dive into here on the podcast even deeper and how they relate to you personally, you will be held and guided back to your inner wisdom as you anchor into a business that serves you as it serves humanity. For more information, go to bossybabecoaching.com/portal of mastery membership. And if we're not already connected over on the gram, please come and let me know what landed for you from this episode. Until next time, I will leave you with this. Being willing to allow all parts of you to sit at the table with compassion and self-reverence will be your access point to liberation. I love you. See you in the next episode.